برکاتی صلواتی بر محمد و آل محمد.
Salam alaikum, everyone. Welcome. I hope all your prayers and your fasting is accepted by Allah. So it's my great honor tonight to introduce Dr. John Evans. Dr. Evans is a professor in sociology, associate dean of social sciences, and co-director of the Institute for Practical Ethics in University of California in San Diego. Dr. Evans' research investigates a wide array of issues in culture, politics, religion, and science from a sociological point of view. Dr. Evans' research mainly looks at the relationship between science and religion. Dr. Evans' most recent book is named Morals, Not Knowledge: Recasting the Contemporary U.S. Conflict Between Religion and Science. This book shows that, generally speaking, religion and science debates in the public is not about scientific claims about nature, which is long claimed to be, but rather about morality, and opposition to the morality implicitly promoted by scientists. Dr. Evans' most recent journal publication title is Faith in Science in Global Perspective: Implications for Transhumanism. This article investigates faith in science and examines 3 different types of faith in science that citizens could hold and how they change in time. Dr. Evans recently studied sociological aspects of bioethics, role of genetic technologies in reproduction, its history and future. Dr. Evans' research has been published in over 45 book chapters and prestigious academic journals. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Evans.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction, and I'm honored to be here. This is my first time in a Shiite community mosque, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to meet everybody. I hope what you find what I have to say. Start by saying is that I'm a sociologist of religion, which what that means is that I don't make claims about religion itself. I'm not a theologian. Instead, I examine what other people think about religion. I'm also a specialist on the U.S. public as a whole, and I usually use surveys to do that, which means that I can't really evaluate what religious minorities think about things. So, for example, about 1% to 2% of the population of the United States is Muslim, 1 to 2% is Jewish, less than 1% Hindu, less than 1% Buddhist, and so on. And so I can't really make claims about those traditions, so I do not know as much of the details. So what I am is an expert on the dominant religion in the United States, which everyone is aware is Christianity. So I do hope that you find this to be interesting about what Christians think about religion and science. And it's, what many people have heard is that there is this ongoing conflict between religion and science. Some people would say there's a war between religion and science. The most famous example would be Galileo and the Catholic Church, where supposedly it was that Galileo said that the Earth goes around the sun, and the church said no, the sun goes around the Earth, and this was supposed to be the first conflict. Most famous, perhaps in the American context, is Charles Darwin in the 19th century, who said that humans evolved from lower primates, or claims that the Earth is 6,000 to 7,000 years old. Well, Many scientists say that religion and science are competing ways to know about facts about the world, and that the religious version is inferior to the scientific one. So if you go to interview scientists, they would say, do you find out about the age of the earth by looking at the carbon dating of rocks, or do you look to sacred texts? And that this is a debate about how to examine the world. So let's ask about this debate more closely by saying, if there's conflict over what? What would the conflict be? And there are, I think, 3 possible conflicts between religion and science among the majority of Americans. The first one would be a conflict over systems of knowledge, how you approach knowledge about the natural world at all. So when people talk like this, they say fundamental ways of knowing about the world, or how do you know anything about the world? This would emphasize methods. So, for example, in the Protestant tradition, which has long dominated the American public sphere, certainly from the colonial era to the last half of the 20th century, the claim would be, to find scientific claims, you would look to the Bible and see what the Bible says about the natural world. Well, if that's what's going on, if these are truly different ways of understanding the world, and that's what happens with the public, that there's this sort of conflict, what we would expect to see is that religious people in America wouldn't agree with anything the scientists say, because the scientists are not using a religious way of knowing, and vice versa. So, for example, if you didn't believe in human evolution for religious reasons, then you couldn't believe in knowing anything about the world scientifically, like modern chemistry, global warming, or anything else. So that's one, which is sort of entire ways of knowing about the natural world. A second is what I would call propositional knowledge. A proposition is just a statement you make without the backing justification for it. And this is where certain fact claims about the world are in conflict, but not entire ways of knowing. Thank you very much. So, for example, a conservative Protestant who is in this sort of conflict might say that I disagree with scientists about the age of the earth or where humans came from, but I fully agree with scientists about how electrons move in atoms, how geology works, how butterfly wings fly, etc., etc. So this conflict, if this is what's happening in the United States, has much fewer consequences, because it only impacts certain parts of debate. So to give you an example, if this is what people are in conflict, religious people in the US are in conflict with science about, you would see no difference in the religious people's becoming scientists, with the possible exception of biology, which is the source of these few debates about human origins, and there would be equally number of religious chemists, climate scientists, and so on. A third type of conflict, a final type, is moral conflict. So the conflict that might be happening among the American public may be that religious people perceive science or scientists to be teaching a moral stance to the public, and that moral stance may be in opposition to the moral stance of that religious community, and that would be the source of conflict. So many scientists would say, well, how can science be in moral conflict, because science is morally neutral. Science is just the neutral observation of nature. It doesn't have a morality. Well, in actuality, at least in the cultural context of America, at least scientists have picked up certain aspects of morality, which I'll go to in a minute. But I think the most famous example remains Darwin. So Charles Darwin, in the 1870s in England, proposed in a book that humans evolved from lower species through evolution. This was incredibly controversial at the time among religious people, not because that claim contradicted the Christian Genesis account of human origins, but because it was considered to be morally scandalous. Because that meant that humans are just like animals, and animals don't really have morality. Animals do all these terrible things to each other. Does that mean that we are animals? So there are these three ways that religion and science could be in conflict in the public. The systemic knowledge, like entire ways of knowing, individual facts, which I'm calling propositional knowledge, or over morality. So that's the start, the sort of general outline. But I've been talking about religion or Christianity in America like it's one thing. So I'm going to give you the 1 minute version of world Christian history. So I'm glossing a few details, as you might imagine. So just so we're all on the same page here. So there's Jesus' followers. Then these people spread throughout the world. Many places like Egypt, these people eventually become Copts. Then there's Syriacs, there's Chaldeans, Maronites. But these people remain geographically isolated to the Middle East and don't end up influencing the entire world. Then there's this church in Rome, okay? And it splits with Constantinople, okay? Constantinople is become Eastern Orthodoxy. That influences a good portion of the world, but those people don't come to the United States in any numbers. So we're at Rome, which becomes known as the Roman Catholic Church. That splits in half. Well, it first essentially takes over most of Europe, okay, with the Holy Roman Empire. And then in the 16th century splits into two pieces, Catholics and Protestants. The Protestants show up in the United States, later Catholics, but mostly Protestants early on, and those are the people who dominate the American religious scene from really the colonial era until very recently, okay? So now I'm up to like the 1920s, so I skipped a few details. But in the 1920s, you see the major splits in American religion life, which is between the Protestants who would become known as fundamentalists and ones who would become known as liberal or mainline Protestants. And then in the 1940s, in the middle, there's a group called evangelicals who are sort of a schism off of the fundamentalists. They're more liberal than the fundamentalists. So that's my quick summary there. And I want to talk briefly then about how it is that knowledge about the world and religious knowledge about the world, scientific knowledge about the world, is officially handled within these religions. And when I say official, I will say that the only of these Christian religions in America that has an official way to do this is Catholicism. But I'm generally talking about most of the opinions. So, let me start with Catholicism, which is officially, if there is a conflict in Catholicism between the religion saying some fact claim about nature and scientists having some fact claim, they cannot be in conflict. One of them is wrong, it could be either one, and the job is to change theology or fix science until they are in sync. The thing about Catholicism, this often has like a 100-year time lag, but it eventually will happen. That's the idea, okay? So for example, Pope Pius VI said, "Science, which consists in true recognition of fact, is never opposed to the truths of the Christian faith." Or Pope John Paul II recently says, "Science can purify religion from error and superstition. Religion can purify science from idolatry and false absolutes." So, the other group are the conservative Protestants. This is like 25% of the American population. And in general, there would be support for this idea that the Bible is true in what it says about the natural world, and it's really important that that Bible be also in sync with science. However, you can't change the biblical interpretation. And so therefore, you get a lot of subtle sort of interpretations of things having to do with the original meanings of words and such. This is the religion that officially has conflict with science in the United States because it doesn't have a way to adjudicate when the religion says one thing and science says another. Another group, and the final group I'll talk about, are these liberal or mainline Protestants. So here, if you're driving around, you would see these are Methodists, Episcopalians, Lutherans, people like this. This religion in America was essentially invented to solve this very problem. It was invented to solve the problem of the difference between religious claims and scientific claims. So in the 1920s, when they had this fight with the fundamentalist Protestants, the fundamentalist Protestants would say every word of the book of Genesis is factually true about what happens in nature, and the mainline or liberal Protestants would say that the book of Genesis is an account of people with their knowledge of that time struggling to understand the truth of God. So they have this way of resolving this problem. So just to quote one of the historians of this tradition, John Roberts, says, mainline Protestants maintain that the progress of scientific investigation required Christians to make significant revisions in their doctrine and biblical interpretation, and this has been viewed as the defining feature of American liberal Protestant theological tradition. So I want to point out a sort of a nuanced position here, which is that if you were to go find your closest liberal or mainline Protestant church and said, do you believe in the resurrection of Jesus, which is a central concept, they would say yes. Would science agree with that? No. But no scientist cares about that. Okay? So there's only conflict. It takes two to have a conflict. And so there's all these religious claims that no scientist cares about. It's the claims that science cares about, like evolution and the like, for which they've solved these problems. Okay. So those are, I've got three types of possible conflict. I've got three general types of Christians that I've talked about. And I want to make some conclusions about what types of conflict exist within the general public of the United States. Not the leadership, not the pastors, not the clergy, etc., but among their average citizens. So let me start with this idea of this systemic knowledge conflict, where it's an entire way of understanding the natural world. Do ordinary religious people have different ways of knowing about the world? So, in a set of studies that I conducted, I examined whether religious groups are less likely to be exposed to science. So if it's really true that there's an entire different way of perceiving the world, then religious people would be less likely to be involved with any science at all. But when you examine that with the surveys and other methods, you compare members of each religious group to the non-religious. So there should be this giant difference here. And what I found was that all the Christian groups in the United States, including these conservative Protestants, are less likely to agree with scientists about these human origin sorts of questions. Did humans evolve from lower primates? Did the universe be created with a big explosion, the Big Bang? Excuse me. But what I find is that everyone is no less likely than the non-religious to know scientific facts, scientific methods, have taken science classes, have a scientific occupation, be interested in science, and so forth. So that is, they have this disagreement about this one or two fact claims, but that doesn't seem to lead to disagreement over scientific fact claims writ large. There are all these claims together. So they're not in this systemic knowledge conflict with science. There's other research that's been done on this, can be interpreted the same way. So, for example, there's research on whether higher education leads to people having fewer religiously derived beliefs about the natural world. And so if that systemic conflict theory is correct, then exposure to any science, like through higher education, should lead to less belief in any religion. One study shows that education in general does not lead to the decline of religious belief during young adulthood. However, the greatest decline in religious belief as young people go through adulthood is among the people who didn't go to college, who didn't get any scientific education. That's the more extreme fall off in religious belief. Other studies show that attending college has no influence on pre-existing belief about evolution, and taking classes in the natural sciences does not cause a greater decrease in religious belief. Social psychologists have conducted experiments and conclude that people have no problem holding seemingly contradictory ideas together, like evolution occurs through nature and evolution was caused by God. So these psychologists conclude that there's considerable evidence that the same individuals use both a natural and a supernatural explanation to interpret the same events. So again, if there was conflict between any scientific claim and all religion, then being religious should make a person likely to avoid all of science, but that's not what we find. So, while most Christian groups are in this propositional knowledge conflict, where there's just a few fact claims for which they do not agree, while that's expected for conservative Protestants, it's a bit of a surprise for the Catholic and the liberal Protestants, because I told you there's a mechanism for solving this problem, but the regular citizens who are members of this religion don't seem to know it. And I'll sort of, in my limited time, I won't go into my various theories for why that's the case. But as was said during my introduction, I have a book coming out. It's actually for free, so if you can Google my name and look this up, and it's the University of California Press is sending this thing out for free. If you want to download it, usually I make an entire $1 off of every book I otherwise sell, but this one's for free. And the primary conflict between religion and science is moral, and not about knowledge at all, I would say. And yes, there are disagreements about these few fact claims, but even those disagreements seem to be largely motivated by moral concerns. So let's go back to Darwin and human evolution. This is the sort of the religion and science debate in American history that's generated all of the court decisions, all of the policies and everything about teaching evolution in the public school system. Going back to the 1920s, there was a very famous case in the South where some of the states made teaching evolution in the schools illegal, and this was eventually found to be unconstitutional. The most famous anti-Darwinist in America in the 1920s was presidential candidate and Protestant fundamentalist William Jennings Bryan. He thought that he wasn't worried that Darwinism corrupted our view of religious texts. He thought that learning Darwin corrupted the morals of young people. In fact, he thought that World War I was caused by Darwin. World War I was caused by Germans learning about Darwinism, which corrupted their morals and made them think that human life was cheap, and so they would start this war. Moreover, the history has been that people see Darwin as advocating a form of eugenics, which is obviously eugenics meaning that you encourage the more children from the people who are genetically superior and fewer children from the people who are not, and that is something that many people are morally opposed to. So let's turn to the public in the end here. Is the religious public in moral conflict with positions held by scientists? So there are many studies of this that suggest that for the religious public, the relationship between religion and science is moral, not about knowledge of the physical world. So for example, analyses show that the most conservative religious people you can identify with a survey in the United States, because it's hard to measure people with surveys, are these fundamentalist Protestants. And they're equally likely to believe in scientists' ability to determine fact claims about the world, about everything except human origins, but they don't want scientists to be involved in public affairs at all. Why is that? They think of it themselves as being in a long-term moral conflict with scientists, and they don't want the scientists to have influence on what happens in public affairs. Or, for example, as historians have long showed us, debate about Darwin for ordinary people, citizens, is only partly about competing fact claims and actually more about the moral implications of Darwinism and its effect on human behavior. Take a more specific example, people now perceive scientists as being in favor of things like embryo research or human embryo research, and they might have their own moral opposition to the destruction of embryos, and so they see that as a conflict as well. So let me sum up my talk here, which is I've been examining what is conflict between religion and science among the public, focusing on religion, focusing on the largest religious tradition in the United States, which is different types of Christianity. There is propositional knowledge conflict between primarily conservative Protestants and scientists over a few issues, mostly having to do with the origins of humans, mostly having to do with whether or not humans evolved from lower life forms like primates. But there isn't this conflict in entire ways of knowing about the natural world. Indeed, you find many fundamentalist Protestants being quite happy as chemists, engineers, all forms of science that just don't make claims about these one conflictual issues like human evolution. But there is very strong evidence of a historical, moral conflict between religion and science that, if anything, is going to be growing in the upcoming years as the ability of science to change the human body itself increases. The human body itself being a traditional place where religions make claims. And so I think we can expect to see with gene editing and things like that, to see more conflict, not about facts, but about morals in the years to come. So with that, I will stop and answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
I will briefly explain what just Dr. Evans said. من خیلی سعی میکنم به صورت خیلی خلاصه ترجمه خیلی فشرده از چیزایی که دکتر ایوان گفتن براتون بیان کنم. چیزی که آقای دکتر گفتن، اول شروع کردن با اینکه بدونیم که موضوعی که اول از همه عذرخواهی کردن که به صورت خاص در مورد مسیحیت صحبت میکنن. خب وقتی اینکه رشته ایشون تحقیقات در زمینه علوم اجتماعی تو امریکاست و چون دین غالب اینجا مسیحیته، برای همین تمرکز بیشتر تحقیقات ایشون در زمینه مسیحیت و به همین دلیل هم یه تاریخ خیلی یک دقیقه‌ای کوتاهی از تاریخچه مسیحیت خواستن بدن که لازمه این که متوجه حرفاشون بشیم اینه که تاریخچه کوچیک از مسیحیت رو بدونیم. اونم اینه که داشتن میگفتن که خیلی از کسایی که به امریکا مهاجرت کردن مسیحیایی نبودن مثل مسیحیای ارمنی، آشوری یا قبطی که تو مثلا خاورمیانه هستن. اینا کسایی بودن که از منبع مسیحیتشون مسیحیت کاتولیک بوده که وقتی در اروپا اینا اومدن سر این مسیحیت رشد پیدا کرد، بعد به دو تا گروه تقسیم شد که این کاتولیک ها پروتستان ها ازشون به وجود اومدن و این گروه ها وقتی که اومدن تو امریکا باعث شدن که چند تا گروه باز دوباره به چند تا شاخه و انشعاب پیدا کردن. این شاخه و انشعاب ها پروتستان هایی بودن که به قول معروف خیلی پروپاگورس معتقدن که انجیل منبع همه توضیحات علوم عالم. یه گروه دیگه دارن که پروتستان های لیبرال هستن اصطلاحاً. اینا کسایی هستن که میگن خیلی خوب ما یه انجیل داریم و یه سری وقایعی هم علوم و دانش ها دارن به ما اطلاع میدن و حالا ما باید ببینیم که چجوری اینا رو با هم آشتی بدیم. لزومی نداره که ما حتما کورکورانه بخوایم از انجیل رو دنبال کنیم. و یه گروه کوچیکی هم هستن که همچنان کاتولیک هستن و به این اعتقاداتشون پایبند هستن. حالا این دلیل این که این داستانه مسیحیت و این همه اطلاعات رو داریم به شما میدیم و سر شما رو در میاریم چیه؟ برای اینکه نکته مهم اینه که وقتی که این دانش مذهبی وجود داره و همینطور یه سری علوم هم میان دارن به شما توضیح میدن دنیا چجوری کار میکنه. یه مثال خیلی معروفش که خیلی تاکید داشتن در طول صحبتاشون روش منبع آفرینشه. این که بالاخره آقا جان مثلا بر اساس انجیل 6000 سال پیش 7000 سال پیش یا آدم و حوایی روی زمین اومدن، منبع آفرینش اون بوده یا نه منبع آفرینش نظریه تکامل آقای داروین بوده. خب ظاهرا نظریه تکامل آقای داروین میگه که ما از حیوانات خیلی سطح پایین و حتی از میمون‌ها رشد کردیم و به یک انسان تبدیل شدیم. خب ظاهرا این دو تا تفکر با هم در تضاد و تقابل هستن و سوال اینه که خب اینا چجوری می‌خوایم با هم کنار بیان؟ و حالا اگه من به عنوان یه پروتستان یا یه آدم مذهبی که هستم اینو بشنوم، آیا این ممکنه باعث میشه حتی نخوام برم دنبال علم و دانش، بگم آقا این چه علم و دانشیه که داره به من میگه منو از دین دور بکنه، چون دنیا رو خدا آفریده و خدا اون دین رو فرستاده و این شاید باعث بشه اصلا من نخوام، شاید این علم منو کافر بکنه. حالا آیا این تاثیر ممکنه بذاره که من دنبال علم و دانش نرم یا نه؟ پس دارن سعی میکنن روی این موضوع کار بکنن که چه تقابل‌هایی ممکنه با وجود بیاد و این تقابل‌ها چه تأثیری بذاره. بعد شروع کردن نتایج سری تحقیقات در این زمینه‌ها رو ارائه دادن و یکی از جالب‌تریناشون این بود که آیا اگه من آدم مذهبی هستم ممکنه برم دنبال علم و علوم؟ چرا؟ با وجود اینکه ممکنه اونا حرفایی رو بیان بکنن که برخلاف اعتقادات من باشه. و چیز جالبی که بیان کردن این بوده که تحقیقات نشون داده که اگه مذهبی باشید، حتی اگه جزو اون گروهایی باشید که اعتقادات خیلی سفت و سختی نسبت به مذهب دارن، این مانع از این نشده که آدم‌ها دنبال علم و دانش نرن. یعنی چی؟ یعنی کسی که یک پروتستان خیلی پر و پا قرص است ممکنه یک مهندس بشه، ممکنه یک پزشک بشه. پس این باعث نشده که آدم‌ها دنبال علم و دانش نرن. بعد سوال بعدی که پیش میاد اینه که خیلی خوب ممکنه اینا دنبال علم و دانش برن بعد کافر بشن. خب آیا تحقیقاتی وجود داره که اینم بره بررسی کنه؟ که یه نتیجه خیلی جالبی که گفتن اینه که دیدن نه خیر اینجوری هم نیست. یعنی چی؟ یعنی آدمایی که رفتن دنبال علم و دانش و تحصیلات عالیه داشتن اینجوری نبوده که بی خدا بشن. برعکس اتفاقا چیزی که نشون دادن اینه که اکثر اون آدمایی که شک میکنن به دین و حتی ممکنه قبول نداشته باشن دین، آدمایی هستن که تحصیلاتشون پایین‌تر بوده. و این خیلی موضوع جالبی بود که بیان کردن. اگه من بخوام خیلی خلاصه این رو بیان بکنم. بعد خارج از این موضوع آخرین چیزی که در موردش صحبت کردن اینه که خیلی خوب حالا که ما منبع آفرینش رو بدونیم چرا این موضوع ممکنه مهم باشه؟ برای اینکه یه سری مباحث حقوقی الان در امریکا مطرح هست در زمینه مثلا سقط جنین یا مباحث مشابه این که آدما دارن میپرسن از خودشون آیا این کار اخلاقی هست؟ آیا این کار درستی هست یا کار درستی نیست؟ یا مثلا آیا ما باید ژن‌های بچه‌ها رو دستکاری بکنیم موقعی که میخوام به دنیا بیان که مشکلی داشته باشه یا مشکلی نداشته باشه؟ اینا همه بحث‌های خیلی اخلاقی و قانونی خیلی سختی است. و صحبتی که دارن میکنن اینه که آیا آدم‌هایی که اعتقادات مذهبی دارن و در مقابل دانشمندان آیا اینا دارن تعیین میکنن این بحث چجوری صورت بشه و آیا این بحثشون بر پایه نظریات علمیه یا نه بحثشون بر اساس اخلاقیات خودشون؟ خب یعنی چی؟ یعنی اگه بخوایم ما جمع‌بندی بکنیم اینه که وقتی که شما می‌بینید دعوای یه دانشمند با یه دیندار، کسی که معتقده که انجیل تمام اصول رو بیان کرده و کسی که معتقده که تمام علوم و دانش هستن که اصول رو تعیین میکنن، موقعی که اینا دارن صحبت میکنن که آقا مثلا ما یه جنینی رو باید سقط بکنیم یا نکنیم، اینا میگن که بحث اینا هیچ وقت نمیاد بر پایه اصول واقعی علمی باشه، بحثشون بر اساس مورالیتی یا اخلاقیات. یعنی همه این آدما هر چقدر هم بگن که آقا من دارم بر اساس یه سری اصول و اخلاقیات و یه سری دین دارم عمل میکنم، هر کاری اینا بکنن اینا برداشت خودشون از اون اخلاقیاتی که داره تعیین میکنه که نسبت به اون موضوع چی فکر میکنن. چه من که یک دانشمندم باعث میشه که برداشت من از اخلاقیات شروع کنم نظر بدم که آیا باید جنین سقط بشه یا نه، یا مثلا ژن‌های آدم‌ها رو دستکاری بکنیم یا نه. چه اون آدمی که دینداره و میگه که نه من بر اساس متن مذهبی دارم نظر میدم، ولی اون آدم هم همچنان اخلاقیات و چیزایی که تو نظر خودش هم هست داره وارد به این بحث میکنه. و این موضوع خیلی مهمه چون ما هدف نقایت آدم‌ها ظاهراً بر اساس پیش‌فرض اینه که ما می‌خوایم این نظرات خودمون به این قضیه تاثیر نذاره، واقعاً دنبال حقیقت باشیم. و این مطالعات داره به ما کمک میکنه که بفهمیم که آیا این چیزایی که داریم نظر میدیم، مثلا دادگاهی تو آمریکا ممنوع میکنه اینکه ژن بچه‌ها رو دستکاری بکنیم یا نه، یا مثلا یه دادگاهی اجازه سقط جنین میده، آیا اینها بر اساس نظریات آدم هاست یا بر اساس حقیقت محض، حقیقت واقعی که اون بدون اینکه نظر آدم ها اون رو دستکاری کرده باشه بیاد تعیین کرده باشه. این سوال خیلی سختی که دارن جواب میدن. من عذرخواهی میکنم اگه چیزهایی که از حرفاشون رو من براتون نتونستم ترجمه کنم در این زمان محدود و هر چیزی که در توان من بود من تونستم برای شما بیان کنم.
بیشتر گفتید، کمتر نگفتید.
I was trying to put everything in the words that دکتر ایونز میگن که موافق نظر ترجمه من هستن. Now we are going to have the question and answer time. So we are going to have a brief Q&A part. So I will do my best to translate the questions. حالا ما یه جلسه پرسش و پاسخ خیلی کوتاهی به مدت 10 دقیقه داریم. اگه کسی سوالی دارن بگن که ما براشون سعی می‌کنیم ترجمه. یا اگه خودتون به انگلیسی میتونید بیان کنید.
Well, first of all, Doctor, we welcome you very much. And we appreciate your service. We appreciate your service, and that's a lot of work. And for me to ask my question, I have to read all your books and see how much I do agree with you everything, because you're doing the best service for the future of human being. We are in conflict with ourselves rather than with others. As you will know, and you will understand this, that religion is a good thing. It's good for the people, for their morality, and for their well-being, for the future and future. But unfortunately, it shows that there are corrupt people from the beginning to the end, and they are preventing people from going to higher education into the knowledge. As Dr. Qari, he has read the Quran, the citation. He said that God created us with knowledge and with health. So we are very much here deeply thinking that, well, we are created with knowledge and dignity. And God has given us human beings so much dignity. I just want to make it short, because I have a lot to say, but I'll make it short. Well,
What is your question?
I'll come to my question, because
You have short
my
time.
short question doesn't mean anything, you know. I just come with a word, and
Okay, so
he
let's
may not know
we can ask.
what is my idea. He will get to the point. So I want to tell this much, that we are created by God as a human being, and the knowledge comes with us. We are God's representative on earth. We are not someone that you think that unworthy, like Darwin says. We are not that. My question is right here. Well, the question is, sorry, I was, Doctor, with all the things that Rumi says that we have to go as far as we can, and Hafiz says, why don't you think and go to the universe? It is for you. And Quran says, I give you the power to go and conquer the universe. It is for us, not for anyone. So the question comes here right away, that with all the morality and religion, which is one part, and the other part, the science. Science is also work of God. So we don't go against it.
وقت نداریم.
We don't go against science.
Okay.
Because we're short on time. So.
Yeah, science is all. The thing is that does the scientist have they proved to reject the idea of Darwin?
Okay.
This is my question.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because they are all ahead of the time.
I think in terms of, I think scientists would, there's couple different things I would say in reaction to what you said. One is that I think scientists the modern scientific community would all agree with almost everything Darwin said about where humans came from. He said a few other things that I think are important to lift up in the tradition that I'm more familiar with, which is Christianity, which says something very similar, which is essentially God created humans with wisdom and with their own rational and observational skills and religion at the same time. And so one way of putting it is that why would God be tricking people that their wisdom and their perception was wrong? And so humans are both of these things together. And so how do you bring these things together to be like a full, you said early on, like a full human basically encompasses both of these things. So I think that's central to a lot of religious traditions.
Excuse me. Is Darwin's idea is exact science or not?
Well, Darwin's ideas is an exact science. I mean, I would say that there's a component of Darwin's claims which are truly an exact science as defined by modern philosophy of science. However, there's all sorts of things that have been attached to Darwin's theory which are not scientific, which are essentially moral. So, yeah, so the classic divide is, can you observe it or not? So did humans evolve from primates? Well, no one was around during that time, so that's sort of based upon models and theories. You can actually watch amoeba evolve in front of you in a dish, you know. So that is a little more definitive.
Yeah, thank you very much for this amazing talk, Professor. I have two short questions. The first one is that how do you in sociology define the concept of self? And then the second question is that do you believe on free will? And if yes, do you think that religion is going to facilitate the free will humans to have more free will, or it's just going to eliminate and prevent humans and just restrict them? So these are the two questions.
Yeah. So I mean, you're referring to these huge open debates in academia, of course. And so I will say that there's one extreme position, which is some sociologists take, which the entire notion of the self and free will is all a myth, and that everything you do is caused by your relationships with everybody else. Now, I would take a more moderate view, which is to say, people do have free will, okay, that they enact. I'm not totally constrained by everyone around me, but let's just say half. You know, so
Yeah, you made it half up.
yeah, I'm just estimating here. But now there's another version of free will, which is there's a traditional religious free will, which is different than the sociological version of, you know, and the religious free will is, did God give people free will with which to act in the world? And I think that that is the case, at least from the tradition that I am from.
So there is one question over there, but first of all, are there any questions from the ladies? Because I might have been, the time is mostly consumed by men here, so is there any questions on the ladies' side?
My first question is, first of all, thanks for your short speech. My first question is, first of all, what is your view of science?
Yeah.
Since you mentioned about there's a conflict between Christianity or religion and the science, what is your view? And then the other thing I want to tell you is this: since you said the dominant religion is in the United States Christianity,
Right.
I understand you're an intellectual person. Don't you have to study Islam and figure it out? The gentleman was trying to say that in Islam there is no conflict between religion and science.
Yeah. So let me start with the other one first, which is, as a scholar, don't I need to understand Islam? And I think the one answer would be to say, if I was a scholar of what's called religious studies, which is to understand religious views of the world in general, the answer would be absolutely. Given a huge portion of all the people in the world are Muslim, and this is one of the great religious traditions, I should know this in depth. But the more limited case of making claims about what happens in the United States, particularly with policy, it matters less what small groups think. So that's my sort of, given the narrowness of what I study, it's less important for me to know because I'm not making claims about idea systems themselves. If I was interested in the idea systems themselves, I would absolutely have to know that. And I regret not knowing more about all things, but my mortality gets in the way.
What is your view?
Yeah, my view. So my view of all of this is, I'll say that I am a member of that mainline Protestant tradition, and so my view is that, like I said before, God gives humans this rational mind and our ability to observe the world. That's a very limited way to perceive God's creation. And so there's another way, which is taught to us by holy teachings. And you got to figure out some way to put them together. And there's various ways we can do this. And so I think that I agree with most of what I see that uses the scientific method with a bit of humility added to the top. And most critically, the one thing I would say is I'm opposed to the idea that science can explain all things. Science can explain things about the natural world quite well. It cannot explain other things, and that you just got to kind of keep the different specialties in the right places.
If there is any questions, otherwise I would like, if everyone is okay, I would like to translate just this talk in Persian for people who didn't get it. سوال خیلی کوتاه این بود که پرسیدن که آیا در زمینه اسلام، این حیف نیست که در زمینه اسلام تحقیقات انجام نشده، چون اگه دقت کنید بیشتر توضیحاتی که دادن همونطوری گفتم در زمینه مسیحیت بودن و جوابشون گفته این بود که درسته که با تعداد مسلمانای دنیا بسیار زیاد هستن و گفتن که خیلی حیفشون میاد که نمیدونن که اسلام در زمینه این تقابل دین و دانش چه حرفایی میزنه. ولی این رو هم گفتن که یه دلیل این که به صورت خاص در زمینه مسیحیت و دانش دارن کار میکنن اینه که موضوع تحقیقاتشون در مورد ایالات متحده است و در ایالات متحده متاسفانه مسلمان‌ها در اقلیت هستن و مثلا مسیحی‌ها در اکثریت هستن و میخوام ببینن که این چه تأثیری روی سیاست‌گذاری در ایالات متحده میذاره. پس این به این معنی نیست که دین‌های دیگر رو برایشون اهمیت قائل نیستن. به این معنی است که به صورت خاص چون تو امریکا این تقابل بین مسیحیت و دین هستش دارن روش تحقیق میکنن. سوال دوم پرسیدن که نظر خودتون چیه؟ چون خود ایشون هم یک سری اعتقادات دارن دیگه. گفتن که ایشون هم از پروتستانی اومدن، از مذهب پروتستان اومدن و نظر خود ایشون اینه که علم و دانش یه سری مثل یه چراغ کم نوری میمونه و همه چیزو داره توضیح نمیده. مذهب از اون ور یه سری چیزایی داره توضیح میده که هنوز هیچ فکری در اون زمینه ها نداره و امیدوار هستن که این دوتا بتونن با هم به یه نقطه مشترکی برسن به جای اینکه همش با هم در جنگ و دعوا باشن. Sorry, I had to translate this part. So. Question.
Thank you for your talk. So, from what we see, we feel that the society is going to be a bit less religious.
Yes.
Is that true based on your studies, and where are we going? What do you see?
So I think it's safe to say that at least American society is becoming less religious year by year. I mean, there's different ways to describe that, and then of course the main question is why. And my current dominant theory is Netflix, by which I mean that's sort of a stand-in for all the things you can now do by yourself, okay, and not be in a community. So I grew up in a very small town in the upper Midwest of the United States in the 1960s, and it was against the law for stores to be open on Sunday morning. And there was television channels, there was 3 television channels that showed nothing of interest on Sunday morning, and so there's no competition. You know, and so now there's a million things you could be doing, etc. And so that's one sociological explanation for what's happening. The one thing I don't think is happening is many people attribute the rise of scientific thinking to the decline of religion, and the evidence is that that's not the case. I think it's essentially a social problem, and it's different in every place. You know, I think in Europe really suffered from having national religions. I think that was very bad for religion, but I think something like that is the explanation in America. But it's the fastest growing religion in America is none.
Let me just briefly translate and I'm going to bring it من ترجمه می‌کنم که خیلی کوتاه. سوالش این بود که آیا وضعیت دین چطوره تو امریکا با توجه به این شرایط و گفتن که متاسفانه رو به افول هستش میزان دینداری آدم‌ها در امریکا، ولی گفتن این ربطی به این قضیه تقابل دانش و دین نداره. خیلی ساده نتفلیکس، همین شبکه‌های اینترنتی که بچه‌ها نگاه می‌کنن، چون میگن دلیلش اینه که آدما به جای اینکه اینجوری مثل این مسجد یا مثلا مثل کلیسا دور هم جمع بشن، با هم در تعامل باشن، همش به صورت به جای اینکه تعامل اجتماعی با هم دیگه داشته باشن، دارن از تکنولوژی و خیلی چیزایی که مثل نتفلیکس یا مثلا شبکه‌های تلویزیونی دارن استفاده میکنن و این دقیقاً چیزی که به نظر ایشون، البته این نظریه ایشونه، که داره باعث میشه که آدما میزان تمایلشون به مذهب کمتر بشه. حداقل این اطلاعاتی بود.
I just want to say that Islam is different from Christianity. Islam is more compatible with science.
Yes. Yes, and what little I know of the sort of what I would call academic discourse about Islam and science is that there isn't this conflict. The conflict between religion and science is very Christian, especially, and then Islam, what I understand of it on an elite level, much less so. To say nothing, if you go to the Eastern religions, they don't even understand what you're talking about. Like, this is just, why are you even asking this question? So I agree. Yeah.
I have a quick question. It's really nice to have you here today, and my question is regarding the rise of knowledge in science and social sciences today. Do you believe that it also leads towards atheism and Scientology? Because there's a very big amount of knowledge out there right now, which is leading a lot of, Muslims, Christians, all religious people towards Scientology and atheism, believing the theory of evolution. And what is your thought on it?
I think that in general, science itself doesn't lead to the decline of religion because it's not really in conflict for the vast majority of people. You did use a term, I'm not sure you meant to use Scientology, you mean the religious group? Yeah. So I mean, that's like yet another sort of explanation, which is Scientology is an extremely unusual religious group that are typically called cults. Sociologists don't like to use that term. But extremely unusual compared to the rest of society. And the reason that people join groups like that is pretty distinct from ordinary reasons. I mean, the key is you have to be sort of socially isolated in various ways. But I think that science itself is very tangentially related to Scientology. I mean, even more tangentially than you can imagine. So I think that's not the explanation. Scientology is like another explanation altogether.
من فقط یه نکته رو بگم. لطف کلامشون این بود که دانش باعث جدایی آدم هست، این دین نمیشه که در راستای همین سوال بودن و میگفتن مذهبای عجیب غریبی که بعضی جاها در میان، حالا برای ما حداقل ناآشناه، وقت خیلی تقابل، خیلی نقطه مشترک کمی با دین دارن. So thank you very much. Sorry, I had to translate the last answer. So thanks everyone. Thanks Dr. Evans. Now I would like to invite Ms. Hajaba. So
A great honor for the invitation. I appreciate it. Enjoy it greatly.
Thank you.
Wow. That's really perfect. It's
با سلام علیکم جمیعا و رحمت الله و برکاته.
علیکم السلام و
سلام عرض کردم خدمتتون. شب 27م هست. حق دارید روزه گرفتید 27 روز 26 روز. جهت قبولی طاعات و عباداتتون در این شب عزیز روزه هاتون این جمعیت با صفا صلواتی بعد از افطاری بلند ختم بفرمایید. صلوات شعار مؤمنین هست و عزت مرکز هست. صلوات دومتون رو جهت تعجیل در فرج پر از خیر و برکت مولانا بقیت الله الاعظم حضرت حجت ابن الحسن العسکری ارواح العالمین لتراب مقدمه الفدا در این شب عزیز حاجت روا شوید بلند ختم بفرمایید. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. Throughout my studies in the past several years, I was looking for a proper bridge between religion and modern lifestyle, between divine knowledge and sociology. And accidentally online, I found a research, very valuable research, roundtable on the status of religion in American sociology. I was really impressed by this article, and this powerful research was done by our honorable guest, Professor John Evans. I told my friends that I found the last ring, the last part of the puzzle that I was seeking for. And that's why I requested my respected brother, Professor Batkubei, to communicate with Professor John Evans and have him. And we are very proud. Please give him a very loud round of applause. In Quran, over 350 verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highly recommend us to learn, to increase our knowledge. Tonight, according to one narration, is the night of power, one of the most honorable during the month of Ramadan. And Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, whose name is here, and you ask about this beautiful art, he says the most honorable deed during the night of power is to discuss about knowledge and increase your knowledge. And thank God we had this opportunity to learn from you, Professor John Evans. Thank you very much. بیشتر از این وقت شما عزیزان رو نمیگیرم. خواهران و برادران بزرگوار، ممنونم از زحمتی که کشیدید، تشریف آوردید، مجلس رو گرم کردید. خداوند از همه شما رو قبول بکنه انشالله. امیدواریم که انشالله در آینده بیشتر و بیشتر بتونیم که از این مجالس علمی رو داشته باشیم. I wish inshallah in future we would have more invitation. We will have more Professor John Evans here in our community, so our dear youth and university students can learn more from him inshallah in future. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم إلهنا بحق قرآنك المستحكم ونبيك المكرم استجب دعاءنا يا الله 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 يا رحمن يا رحيم. خدایا به احترام این شبهای آخر ماه مبارک رمضان که به روایت لیلة القدر است امشب، قلم مهربان عفوت رو بر خطاهای اعمالمون بکشان، فرج امام زمانمون معجل بفرما، مریضانمون شفای عاجل مرحمت بفرما، حوائج جمع حاضرین و بانیان افطار خانواده حاج سید نور برآورده به خیر بفرما، عاقبت امر همه ما ختم به خیر بفرما. از این مجلس نورانی ثوابی به روح مادر، پدر، اموات، اساتید، حقداران جمع حاضرین و بانیان خیر واصل بفرما. رحم الله لمن یقرأ الفاتحة مع الاخلاص و الصلوات. بار دیگه تشکر میکنم از همه عزیزانی که زحمت کشیدن برای این مرکز و مسجد، مخصوصا مجلس امشبمون، خواهرای محترمی که امروز رو آماده کردن، شکری و خانم همکارانشون، برادر عزیزی که ترجمه کردن، آقای استاد بابک لطفعلی و همسر مکرمه ایشون و خواهر بزرگوارمون که فامیلشون یا خانم دکتر کابوسی و آتنا خانم و بقیه عزیزانمون، دوباره آقای پروفسور باتوبی و برادر عزیزمون آقا همایون که آفیسر همایون نبیزاده که زحمت کشیدن تشریف آوردن. وعجل اللهم فی فرج مولانا صاحب العصر و الزمان. صلی الله علیکم.